Okay, so let's get into this capital budgeting simulation. As you can see, I've already done the simulation in 2014. My company APV ended in 806.11. My revenue started in 2009 at 245.75. And I got it up to 380.29, which actually exceeded my forecasted results, as you can see here. My operating income rose, almost doubled in the 5 years that this simulation went through. My net income, also a fantastic rise, from 13 to 25. Also, I want to just mention that all of these numbers exceeded my forecasted numbers. So if these projects that I'd done hadn't gone, as well as they did, I would be looking at a lower APV. So I just want to make that note. So let's go into these graphs here. Here we have our cash flow by division. As you can see, from 2014 to 24, this is expected to rise very well, from 22 to 44 in 2004, doubling. And as you can see in my revenue chart, I have revenue by division, which basically just shows, what percentage of the revenue each, or what part of the revenue each division is, contributing to. So as you can see, my biggest revenue provider is retail, which makes sense, and my lowest would be licensing, which makes complete sense as well. Now on to operating profit by division. So this may look a little confusing at first, but licensing would have more operating profit if you take into account the fact that licensing doesn't really cost much compared to production and retail. In retail, you have to pay people, you have to ship, and in production, you have to buy supplies, you have to pay people as well, and you have to take care of machinery and what have you. Total assets by division, production and retail right there, toe to toe, because they both have many assets. Licensing doesn't. Licensing has very, very few assets in comparison because it's very intangible. Okay, let's move on to my historical financials. Here we have the income statement and the balance sheet for each of the 5 years that the simulation covered. In 2009, as you can see, I started with a net income of 13.20. Not incredible, I gotta say. You can see in 2010 I moved down to 1231. This was because I made some investments that were going to pay off later, and I knew they were going to pay off later, so I took a little loss for 2010. Now for 2011, as you can see, it rose significantly, from 12.31 to 18.91, nearly 19. This is very good, showing that those investments I was talking about did pay off, and I also made some great investments in 2010 as well.
And then let's move on to 2012, where it increased again to 20.79, and again to 24.50 in 2013, and today it is at 25.43. So as you can see, I went from 13.2 to 25.43 in 5 years, which is a great feat right there in and of itself. Now, on to the balance sheet. So my net current assets is the first thing I want to kind of go over. I increased my assets from under 100 to almost 140 in 5 years. Very, very good. This, was because I did a lot of investing in warehouses and equipment and, new machinery, and everything I owned just started getting more valuable, becoming more valuable. And I actually went from 100 to 102 in the 5 years. My accumulated depreciation kind of went up for a while there, but that's because I was investing in more stuff. And as you can see, it continued to rise after it fell in these 2 initial years, rose up to over where I started, which is good, which is what I'm trying to do. So as you can see, my net assets ended at 241.34, which is something I am pleased with. Now onto the liabilities section of the balance sheet. As you can see, I had an increase in long-term debt from 77 to 88. This isn't bad. This is actually fairly good because this shows that I was investing in things like land and things that are going to improve my business. So I mean, long-term debt is a good sign. However, you don't want it to get too large.
My shareholders' equity has also increased from 80.82 to 93.99. Very good sign. Thus putting my total liabilities at 241.34, which is good. Very good numbers. Now I'd like to direct our attention to the cash flow statements. Cash flow is one of those things that it shows you just how well your business is doing, and in this case, since we're looking at future projections, it'll show us how well we are going to do in the future, how well I've invested in the company, and what's going to happen from then on. So my total cash flow rose from 40 to 69. Very good. Well, it will have risen from 40 to 69 in 2024. Very good. Very pleased with that. That is, those are good numbers, and as you can see, it will increase steadily over each of those years. By about 3 is going to be our 2 to 3 is going to be our common increase. Now, one thing I would like to point out is my cash flow from financing. Having this negative number is good. However, as you can see over here, it's starting to get a little bit high, in my opinion. While financing is good, it's not. It's easy to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. It's easy to kind of get into this position where you're like, yeah, I'm financing, I'm doing good, I'm investing in my company. And then before you know it, you've got so much debt, and you're like, well, shoot, what am I going to do with all this debt? But that's just kind of how I feel about it. I would encourage, my business to go ahead and try and lower that a little bit, but we're not bad where we are in 2014, and who knows what will actually happen in the next 10 years. And as you can see, my ending cash balance will have increased from 11.41 to 19.6. Very good numbers again. So I am making the money to pay back that those investments and that financing, but like I said, it's good to kind of keep an eye on it, make sure you're not getting too out of hand. So that is all I have for this simulation. Thank you for watching, and go Bears.